today's topic for discussion is one of the very important topic in any programming language, especially C, C++, and that talks about dynamic memory or memory management. So memory management happens to be quite critical. The reason for various, most of the C, C++ application failure has been attributed to mismanagement or mishandling of pointers and memory leaks. So we'll explore this particular topic, but I see a lot of students having problem with the basic concepts of memory. So first I will discuss some basic concepts of memory today, and later I will go ahead with the details as to how it can be implemented in C++. So today's session will be divided into two parts. First we'll focus on the concept of memory, and once we have completed this particular concept of memory, then we will go ahead with implementation of dynamic memory management in C++. So let's begin our journey with C++ dynamic memory management. So today's topic for discussion is dynamic memory allocation in C++. But I'll not directly jump to the dynamic memory allocation concepts. I'll first discuss memory and what are the different types of memory and where exactly this dynamic memory allocation happens. Those things we'll discuss first. And then later we'll go ahead with this in details about how it can be implemented in C++. That is what we'll see after that. So when we talk about memory, what exactly do you understand by this particular term memory addresses? Memory address, actually memory is nothing but sequence of bytes. So it is just a sequence of bytes, and the number that identifies the byte in the memory is nothing but its address. Say the byte number 0 will be the first byte, and then the second byte, and then the third byte, and then the fourth byte, and so on. So in the example that I've given, suppose you had 256 MB of memory. Nowadays that's rare. You will have much more memory that is there. But the first byte in the RAM will be identified by number 0, second with number 1, and so on, up to the nearest power of 2 or 256 lakhs, and so on. So it is just sequence of bytes. If you are aware with basic concept of contiguous memory locations, so it's just sequence of bytes, one after another. All those bytes have been stored, and every byte has been given a number. Every byte is identified by a number. It's not given number. We identify every byte by a number. So it's just a raw sequence of bytes. It's a raw sequence of byte, and a byte is identified by its position in the RAM. The byte will be identified with its position in the RAM. The first byte will have identified by number 0, second byte will be identified by number 1, and it will just go on. When we talk about programs, any program that we are actually executing, that is running, every instruction that's there in the program has to be stored in the memory. Every data that is there in the program also has to be stored in the memory. So unless and until the data has not been stored in the memory, we cannot go ahead carrying out operation on that particular data. Unless and until the instructions have not stored in the memory, we cannot go ahead carrying out operation on that particular, we cannot execute those instructions. So the instructions also needs to be stored in the memory, and the data also needs to be stored in the memory. So both have to go into the memory first. And when I use the word memory, I'm not talking about the secondary storage device, that is hard disk. I'm talking about primary memory, that is RAM. So any data that has to be operated upon has to be stored in the memory. Any instruction that has to be executed also has to be stored in the memory. Now let's come back to some basics. Suppose I allocate 1 byte of memory. Now 1 byte is 1 byte, that's okay. And it will be at some location in the memory. Let's say we create a variable of type character. In C, normally a character variable is of size 1 byte, unless we say wide characters we define. But a normal char, variable is only of size 1 byte. So when we create a variable of 1 byte, the address identifies where that character type of data will actually get stored. But suppose if it is not 1 byte, say we create a variable of type integer, and the variable of type integer is of 4 bytes. So in that case, if I talk about its address, are we going to return 4 addresses? No. So it's not going to be identified. Its address, when you talk about, it's the first byte's address. That is what we talk about. So the variable may be spread across 4 bytes. It could be spread across 1 byte, or it could be spread across 8 bytes, or it could be user-defined structure that is much large, a class object that could be very, very large. So it could have been stored across number of bytes of memory. But when we talk about address of such a variable, which is stored across more than 1 bytes of memory, then we are not talking about all the addresses as the address of that particular block of memory. Only the first address is considered to be the first byte's location is considered to the address. So usually it is going to be the case. Say let's take a function, and that function is stored across 1000 bytes. So in that case, if I ask you what's the address of that particular function, you're not going to tell me all the 1000 bytes. You're going to talk about the entry location. That means the first byte inside that sequence of 100 bytes. So the first byte will be identified as the address of that particular variable. So address is nothing but the entry point of the function or entry point of that particular variable, starting from where the variable has been allocated memory and starting from where the instructions have been stored in the memory. So address, everything has an address. Functions have address, variables have address, everything has an address. So when we talk about variables, other than character variables, you will be having or Boolean type of variables. You will have variables which are of size more than 1 byte. So although they may be stored across more than 1 byte, when we say use the word address, we are talking about only the first byte inside that sequence of bytes. We are not talking about all the bytes which are there. And CPU uses this memory address for all the operations. Say you say A plus B, C is equal to A plus B. A very simple operation where you are assigning a result of addition of A plus B into a variable called as C. C is equal to A plus B. Sounds so very simple. But when I say A is just an identifier. Now when I use the word identifier, what does it mean? It means it's just a name given to some location in the memory. So what does the system has to do? It has to identify, fetch the data which has been identified by this identifier called as A, because A is a variable. It is referring to some location in the memory. So us location per ki value it will have to fetch. Likewise, name B is also given to some location memory. So it will also have to fetch the value at that particular location memory. Then these two values have to be added and the result has to be stored at a location which has been identified by the name called as C. So C is equal to A plus B, also simple arithmetic expression that we write, will also be interpreted in terms of addresses, because variable names, function names are only identifiers. When I use the word identifier, they only identify some location in the memory where either data is stored or where some instructions are stored. Now either data or instruction, if a location, if the name identifies instructions, then it is called as function. If the name identifies the function address, if the name identifies the data, is just variables address and so on. So when you talk about every operation your processor carries out, it is carried out in terms of those instructions only. And we are lucky to work with higher level languages. Now here, where the memory has to be allocated, how does C is equal to A plus B, then how does it A identify some location memory, B identify some location memory? That is not really of our concern. Maybe Rahul can help you out. When they talk about embedded systems, when they talk about low level programming at times, then we have to take the responsibility of identifying that bits and bytes in the memory. So when you write very low level code, then we will have to specify what location the data is stored, which is the location from where the data has to be read, which register, which byte the data has to be read. And that's very difficult. But when we are working with these high level languages, we don't really have to bother about such issues. So the addressing is all established for you by the compiler and the linker. They will establish the addresses. What addresses that we get to see may be a relative address, that's okay. But we as a programmer do not really have to worry about which location we will have to go ahead storing the value. That is something we do not have to bother. That is automatically taken care of by these high level languages. So greatest advantage of high level language is that all the addressing details are taken care automatically by the programming language, and the programmer doesn't have to worry about that. So we don't really have to bother about how will A get created, where will it get stored, and what's the location where A has been stored. The normal cases, unless we go in for dynamic memory allocation, we don't really have to bother about all those things. We can access any block of memory in two ways. Either by the name that has been given to that particular location memory, that's a variable name. And second way is to access that particular block of memory by using addresses. And that's nothing but pointers. So pointers are special types of variables. And we have to be very careful while we are handling this concept of pointers. So pointers are special types of variables, and these special types of variables do what? They store address of something. It could be address of variable or it could be address of function. So they stored only addresses, and we can fetch the value which has been stored at that particular address. So we can have pointer to a function, we can have pointer to variable, and variable could be of any type. So pointers point to some location memory. So we can access data that has been stored in the memory by using the variable name or also by using a pointer. So there are two ways in which we can access a block of memory. Two ways. So there are two ways in which we can access directly, say by using variable name, or indirectly by using pointer. So we can go ahead accessing the blocks of memory whenever we want to. So pointers, what are pointers? They are variables like integers, characters, floats. They are also variables. We'll come to the details as to how big these variables are and how we use them. I'll go ahead with a demonstration, but just a simple idea. What are the variables? They are variables. Variables, like any other variable, we can have a constant variable, we have a non-constant variable. So like when we have pointer which is constant, pointer which is non-constant, I hope you recollect the topic that we had discussed, constant and non-constant pointers and everything we had discussed. We had taken all the notations. So pointers are variables which hold memory address. So they're going to store some address. And at that address, what is stored? Only possible two things. Either data is stored or some instructions are stored, but they are nothing but addresses. They are nothing but addresses. With new generation languages like C++ and Java, we also have this concept of references. But early data was thought without the concept of pointer, the language cannot be called as a full-fledged, full-strength programming language. So that was a thought. Now we have restricted pointers, and those are nothing but references, because it has been identified that people go ahead misusing this particular concept of pointers and results into, especially pointer arithmetics, when it goes wrong, it results into crashing of the system. So earlier it was like your language to be called as full-fledged, full-strength language, it has to have concept of pointers. So it's but power of pointers also comes at a price. And the safe use of pointer turns out to be rather difficult in large programs and the source of many bugs. Rather, just at the beginning I shared with you, the reason for failure of most of the C++ application has been attributed to misuse of pointers. Now that's not the language problem, that's the problem of the developer. He misuses this particular concept of pointer. He thinks of carrying out some operation, and the way the pointer expressions are expressed, they actually carry out operation in some other way. That means you interpret the pointer arithmetics in a different way, and there is where we actually go wrong, and it can result into crashing of the system. So it is a powerful concept. It gives you direct access to any location in the memory. I can jump from one location to another. I can manipulate the data which is stored at that particular location. Very powerful feature that the powerful behavior that pointer provides us. But then it comes at a cost. Things can go wrong. Things can go wrong. And the reason why we go ahead using pointers are working with arrays, and especially character arrays. Okay, character arrays, when we talk about a string, we can just take a pointer which is pointing to the string. But let me talk about arrays. Why arrays? Arrays is something that we use very often. Strings, very, very often. Strings, I mean character arrays in which we have stored C-style strings, suppose. And I'm not talking C++ string class. I'm talking the other one, a character array, char, name of 20, when you say. So when you talk about arrays, arrays are a group of variables. And we need to pass those variables from one function to another. Say I have an array in which I have stored your address, character array. And in that character itself, an array of size 100 bytes, 100 characters, because addresses tend to be pretty large. And if I have to pass this array from one function to another, so it will be quite difficult for me, because array of 100 bytes means collection of variables of 100 bytes. 100 bytes of variables are passed. To receive also I'll require another 100 bytes. But that does not happen so in C and C++, because array name also refers to addresses. So when you pass arrays from one function to another, what we at the most require to receive that particular array is just a single pointer, a pointer, and that can receive however big array that you pass. You may pass an array which is of 1,000 characters, and when you pass it to a function, that function may agar use receive karna hai, 1 byte of memory, one pointer variable, it can be 4 bytes or 8 bytes depending on the machine architecture, that can receive the address of the array. Now, when I use the word receive the address of the array, although it is a contiguous block of memory, several variables have been stored one after another. But what we are concerned, we are not concerned with all the blocks of memory. What we are concerned is only the address of the first variable, because we talked about base address. We are not talking about all the addresses. At the beginning, I told you, when we create an integer type of variable and I say address of integer, so I'm not going to talk about all the 4 addresses. I'm going to talk about starting address. So likewise in array also, it may be a group of several variables. We are really not concerned with all the variables. We are concerned with the address of the first variable. So if I get the address of the first variable, I got the address of the subsequent variables, because arrays data is stored in contiguous memory location. So that problem can be taken care of. And second is dynamic memory allocation. So today, forget about developing any commercial application without knowledge of data structures. So data structure is the foundation for development of any large application today. For even the simplest thing that we have to implement, you have to go ahead using some data structure or other at some other different places. And many of them are linked data structures like linked list, trees, and graphs, and other kind of things that we implement. Believe me, it would have been very, very difficult and at times very inefficient had we implemented them without using concept of pointers. So without pointers, it's inefficient for us to implement linked list or even creating an array would have been inefficient when we do not know how many elements are to be stored inside an array. So when it comes to dynamic memory allocation, the word dynamic memory allocation means at runtime, we are going to decide where and how much memory is to be allocated. Normally, when you create a program, or till now, whatever C++ programs that we have written, Inside the program, we have been statically allocating memory. That means right at the beginning, we have been specifying int a char ch of 40. So we have been specifying that. But suppose we do not know how many bytes of memory is to be allocated. So we have to postpone that particular decision till the time the program does not run. So when the program runs, then we have to take a call as to how many bytes of memory has to be allocated. And in such cases, we need to go in for this concept of dynamic memory allocation. Dynamic means allocation of memory as and when required, and deallocating it as well. When we do not want it anymore, we just deallocate. Till now, we could create variables. We could not destroy variables because we have either been creating local variables or global variables in our program. And when we create local variables inside a function, when we go out of that function, only when we go out of that function, that variable gets destroyed, not before that. Say function is pretty large, it's of 100 lines, and I require a variable only the first 25 lines. I cannot destroy it after 25th line. I'll have to wait till the time the function does not get over. Because it is automatically allocated, something which is allocated automatically will also get destroyed automatically. Something that we will allocate, we will have to take a responsibility of destruction. The dynamic memory allocation gives us an opportunity to allocate and deallocate memory as and when required. जब चाहे तब allocate करो, जब नहीं चाहिए तब उसे release कर दो. That is something that we can achieve by using this concept of dynamic memory allocation. And that's something very important for us to implement any data structure. So link data structure together, anything, I said all these data structures that I mentioned, linked list, structure, stacks, and trees and graphs, they're best implemented by using concept of linked data structures. Pointers are useful, they are dangerous. Dangerous because they can access any memory location, and a small error in their use have bizarre results, often showing up only during execution of the program in different environment. So this is where actually things go means it becomes quite tricky and difficult. Because if I write a pointer notation and that is not, it is not doing what I desired it to do, compiler is not going to help you out. Instead of saying, if I write a statement saying star ptr plus plus, and if I say star ptr in bracket and plus plus, both these notations are going to have actually a different effect. But if I say, this seems similar, star ptr plus plus, and in bracket star ptr and then plus plus, this seems to be same, but then things really are very different when it comes to the execution. So we have to be very careful when we write these pointer notations, and we understand what exactly has gone wrong only when you run the program. We get some results which we really cannot comprehend. So pointer arithmetics, one has to be very, very careful, or you have to take utmost precaution when you write any arithmetic, when you perform any arithmetic operation by using concept of pointers. You have to take utmost precaution. And it is quite risky for us to use this concept of pointer. It is estimated that most of the time the bugs in the production software are due to pointer misuse. It's not because of pointers, it's because of misuse of pointer. We do not use that particular pointer concept perfectly, so the problems occur. So some language do not have pointers, and they have more restricted versions of pointers like references. In C++, fortunately, we have both references as well as pointers. We have discussed the references, but then we understood that references were nothing but by default dereferenced pointers only internally. The good thing about them is they could not point here and there. They were throughout their life pointing to the same location memory. But that's not the case with pointer unless I do not define a pointer, constant pointer. Constant pointer, when it's initialized, will constantly point to the same location memory. But that's not always the case. It can today point to one location and tomorrow it can point to another location. It can point also to a location which is non-existing. And there is where we get segmentation faults, and the program immediately crashes when your pointer points to a location which is not existing. So to avoid those kind of problems, we have this concept of references. In future, when you go in for language like Java, we only have references. There are no more pointers, only references. So references are nothing but pointers with restrictions. So they are again pointers, but pointers with restrictions, as we say. They're safer, simpler, because we'll no longer be carrying out pointer arithmetic saying star, PTR, and other kind of things will not be there. Any operation that we tend to carry out on references, it may appear as if we are carrying out operation on the reference, but it actually points to the location where the data is stored. So it's by default dereference. So जिस variable का वो address store कर रहा है, so it will actually carry out our manipulation on the variable to which it is referring to, not the reference. References are pointers that cannot be modified with addition and subtraction. Now, when I'm saying cannot be modified, means the address stored in the reference cannot be modified. If I say reference 1 minus reference 2, that will happen, but that will not reduce. Or if I say reference 1 minus minus, that will not reduce or decrement the address stored in the reference by 1. That will not happen. If I say reference plus plus, that will not increment the value which is stored in the reference by 1. Whenever I say reference in the program, it is by default dereferenced. तो it will alter the value of the variable to which is referring. Reference की value नहीं change करेगा. Reference जिस variable को point करा उसकी value change हो जाएगी. Reference की value will never get changed because they are more like constant pointers. Removing the capability, this capability makes references much more safer than use of pointers. If I say ptr plus plus ptr minus minus, it will change the address that is stored in the pointer. If I say refer plus plus reference minus minus, reference के अंदर कोई change नहीं होगा. No, nothing will change in the reference. What will actually get changed is the variable to which the reference is pointing, that will get changed. Reference will not get changed. So that makes it very safe for us to go in for concept of references rather than going in for pointers. References actually provides us power of pointer, direct access to de hi rahe. So performance of the program will also be very good. And risk of you going wrong in arithmetics pointer operations, that can actually reduce. They are automatically dereferenced. So programming notations are simpler and less error prone. So we don't have this asterisk and ampersand and other things. We don't really have to bother. Every time I have to get, if I say PTR, I'll get the address. And if I say reference, I'll get the value at that address. I do not have to use a star PTR, like star reference. I don't have to say that. Reference are by default dereferenced. So उसके साथ ऐसा assume करेंगे कि there is always a dereferencing star that is always associated with these references, and I can have reference to anything, reference to pointers, reference to variables, reference to anything, any variable that we want to create in the C++, we can have a reference referring to it. Now arrays are fantastic, but they come with their own problem. When we talk about arrays, arrays, how do you define an array? Say I want to store your name and I'd say don't use string class, create an array. So in that case you may probably say char name of 50. Now when you say char name of 50, you have made a provision for 50 and our friend's name is Jay. So he stores Jay. Array he has allocated of size 50. Jay store kya? Jay and \0. Only 4 characters have been occupied. Rest all is waste of memory. So it's just about character, or sometimes it may happen, you may feel that the names are pretty short. Let me allocate less memory. So you say char name of 10, and then you want to say Balasubramaniam. Now the Balasubramaniam goes beyond 10. Then again, you're going to face problem. So either you may fall short of memory, or you may be wasting memory. The most difficult aspect while creating an array, although arrays are created very quickly, fast, it's very efficient implementation. But the biggest problem for anybody who wants to define an array is to identify what should be the size of the array. That's a big question that is there for every developer. How big an array should I define? That's a big question. So when you declare an array of fixed size, so I say int of 1 lakh. So here what's going to happen is you may exceed the memory that is available because RAM is contiguous and there is your entire RAM is not made available for a single program. There are a number of other processes which are also running in your memory, in your program's memory. So in RAM. So in that case, the memory that has been allocated for your program, you may just exceed beyond that. I may say double ka ek array define kara, double B of 1 lakh. Now double is a variable of 8 to 10 bytes and that into 1 lakh, that's a huge amount of memory that you're asking for. So you may not have that much of memory which is available in contiguous memory location. So choosing real maximum is often impossible because programmers have no control of the size of the data set that user is interested in. So you may have defined array of size 1 lakh and user wants to store 1 lakh one number of elements. That's again a problem. You create an array of size 10, user wants to store 12 elements. So you're going to have a problem. So declaring very large array can be extremely wasteful. So you want to just to be on safer side, you create an array of size 1 lakh and you store 5 elements inside it. You have created an array of size 1 lakh. 1 lakh means 1 lakh into 4 bytes. So 4 lakh bytes of memory has been allocated, and out of which you're utilizing only 4 variables. That is 16 bytes of memory you're using, 20 bytes of memory you're using. So there is so much of wastage that can happen if I create a very large array and I do not utilize that entire array. So it will result into very wastage of memory. And second is, in case if I create an array and I thought I want to extend the size of an array, I create an array of size 10, and for some reason, normally I was required to store only 10 elements, and now for some reason I want to store the 11th element. Once created, array size cannot be changed. I cannot increase, neither can I decrease. Once created, the size is going to remain fixed. So expansion kind of concept is not possible when I go in for array. So small size be efficient for typical data set, but prevents the program from running with large data set. That means if I want to extend the size of an array after it has been defined, that's impossible. So these are some of the problems that we come across. Fixed size array cannot be expanded as needed. Neither can be expanded, neither can be reduced. If I create an array of size 100 and I want to reduce it to size 50, not possible. I create an array of size 50 and I want to increase it to size 100, not possible. So that's big problems that we come across in array. And all these problems can be resolved by going for concept of dynamic memory allocation. So if I use this dynamic memory allocation, an array, we can allocate and create memory while you're running the program, not while you're compiling the code. We do not have to specify the size of an array. We can specify how big or how small an array we would like to have while you're running the memory, running the program at that time. So dynamically we can allocate memory and resize if you want to reallocate that array. All those things can be done. Now, while you're talking about dynamic memory allocation, I said we can allocate. Who are we to allocate? From where are we going to allocate? We can at the most make a request to allocate the memory. Are you going to go into the RAM and increase or decrease the amount of memory that is available for us? That's not going to be possible. So we have a lot of operators in C++, a lot of functions in C++, which come from C, and C++ provides some operators for dynamic memory allocation. But all these functions and operators that we today have for dynamic memory allocation, although we say we are allocating, it's not we. We are only making a request for allocation of memory. The memory management is actually done by the operating system. So we need to understand how does this operating system play a role in allocation of memory and memory management. What role does this operating system play? Now, when you talk about this, currently I'm giving you a presentation on PowerPoint. Do you feel this is the only program which is running in your machine? When this PowerPoint is running, my antivirus has been turned off, and there is something in the background. There is an NetBeans application that has started. Is that not what is running? So there are so many applications which are currently running. There's PowerPoint, then there is a Zoom application which is running, and there are so many applications which are currently running. Okay, and come back to your PowerPoint presentation. Suppose I have this PowerPoint presentation which is there. So it may be the case that there are so many applications which are running simultaneously. And keep in mind, they are not the only one. When you after this presentation, you can just while you turn on your machine, just start with that this thing. When we say task manager, start with task manager and see. You'll find that there are hundreds of processes which are running. So I have 8 GB RAM. The entire my computer system has an 8 GB RAM. So the entire 8 GB has not been allocated for this PowerPoint. A fraction of memory has been allocated for PowerPoint application which is currently running, and there are hundreds of other applications which also look out for memory. They are also concurrently being executed. So different processes require different amount of memory. When you launch multiple processes in an application, even the operating system is a process that will also require some kind of memory. So forget about the memory that is being reserved for operating system. Let's talk about the other part of the memory. So there are so many other processes which are currently running in my application. Each of them is needing a memory to run, and somebody has to identify which block of memory has been allocated for which process in the operating system. PowerPoint के लिए कौन सा है, antivirus के लिए कौन सा है, NetBeans के लिए कौन सा है. There are so many processes which are currently running, and each of the process needs to be allocated memory. When I stop with PowerPoint presentation, the memory allocated for PowerPoint, or I close PowerPoint application, the memory that was allocated for PowerPoint application should now be released, and so that it can be utilized for some other application that I may launch. After this, I plan to play a game. So additional set of memory needs to be allocated for that game which is to be launched. So this is something that the operating system takes care of. If somebody asks you what is an operating system or what software can you call as an operating system, there is a very simple definition that we can give as far as the most critical task that software has to carry out for it to be identified as an operating system. Your software may be carrying out hundreds of tasks, but what software can be called as an OS? A software which performs two major operations. And which are those two major operations? Memory management and file management. Memory management is allocation and deallocation resources. And which resources are we talking about? We are talking about two resources, RAM and CPU. RAM is this memory that we have been talking about. So everything while it is running requires some memory, and this allocation and deallocation memory is taken care of by your OS. So and if I create PowerPoint does not have permission to access my Zoom application, and Zoom application will not have permission to access my antivirus software, and so on. So every process is running in a secured block of memory. So there is some section of memory allocated for one application, another section of memory allocated for another application. And one process cannot access memory areas of another process. So these restrictions are also laid by this operating system. It reserves portion exclusive for use of OS. I said OS is also an is a program. It's also an application. It's also a program. It will also require memory. So within the RAM, some substantial amount of memory utilized for the RAM process itself, for the OS itself, and the rest of the memory will be allocated for various applications that you launch on your OS. To enforce protection of memory space, each process enforce protection of memory space for each process and the OS itself. That means, say we have a RAM. This is the memory out of which some section has been reserved for the operating system. Your program cannot get into the memory which has been reserved for your operating system. That's reserved only for OS. It's read-only memory. You cannot write to it. Likewise, there is program 1 and there is program 2. Program 1 cannot access memory of program 2 and program 2 cannot access memory of program 1. Somebody has to enforce this. And this exclusive availability of memory for a particular process, who is ensuring that? And that is ensured by your operating system. And all these operations have to be run as efficiently as possible. So it's a very, very critical role that the operating system performs. So when you talk about in simple, this diagram put it across in simple way. Operating system has a memory manager, and memory is nothing but your entire RAM that we have. And it is the one which is responsible for allocation and deallocation memory for every process. So there is a process one that we have launched, and there's a process the two that we have launched. Process 2 also requires memory. Process 1 also requires memory. It's the OS which allocates memory for them, and then within the process, that memory has been utilized by that particular process, and so on. So there are various areas where the memory is actually being allocated. So we are now going to talk about this concept called as a runtime stack. So when you call a function, what happens? Every function call, when I say int I, semicolon. So when I say int I semicolon, what actually happens? We say variable I is created. Created means what? Some amount of memory is allocated for this particular variable. Some amount of memory is allocated for this particular variable. We int I, here I said. So some amount of memory has been allocated for this particular variable at some location in memory. And we can utilize that memory for assigning or storing some integers. Likewise, so we say it's instantiation. Variable has been instantiated. Likewise, I say student S in C++. Student S. The moment I say student S, we have instantiated an object of class student. That is what we have done. We have created an object of class student. Student S. We have created an object of class student. And inside which we are going to store information about that particular student and so on. Functions are also instantiated. Means what? Say there is a function called as printf in C. The moment you give a call to a function printf, there is a memory which is allocated on the runtime stack for that particular function. Let's take another very simple example. Suppose you have written a function of addition of two integers. The moment you call that particular function saying add, assume that function name is add, 10, 20 is what you have passed, and you are expecting result as 30. So you say answer is equal to add 10, 20. Now, the moment you call that particular function saying add 10, 20, open bracket, close bracket, semicolon, that's how we normally write, correct? The moment you do that, what's going to happen? A block of memory will be allocated on the stack frame. So calling function is a costly affair. So every time you call a function, a block of memory is allocated on the stack frame, where inside that function, whatever are the variables that we have used, each of them will be allocated memory. And then the function proceeds to carry out some kind of operation. And after all the operation inside that function is over, then that block of memory will be released. So these frames are loaded on the stack moment we call a particular function. So parameters are passed by value, local variables are declared within the function, the return value, if any, and all these operations are accomplished by using creating something called as activation record when whenever a function call takes place. So when you call a function, memory will be allocated inside. And where is the memory allocated? On the runtime stack. So I'm now exploring various memory areas which are available. So we have one memory area called as a runtime stack. Runtime stack is a working area for a function. Every time you give a call to a function, some memory will be allocated, and memory is allocated for whom? Memory is allocated for all the local variables which are there inside that particular function. So activation records, that's something that we need to understand in a better way. So I'll demonstrate with the help of an example as well. Activation record contains storage space for all the items mentioned above and perhaps more. When the function terminates, corresponding activation record is destroyed. The process such as stack, each process has such a stack maintained by the system as the process runs. A process cannot directly manipulate the stack, but it is allowed to access those portions of it that corresponds to the local variable. So let me just give an example of what exactly and how does it actually work. So assume, say we have written a small piece of code. So I'll write a small piece of code over here. I think it is visible, everybody. But suppose we are writing a small function. I write a function saying int color of the text. Okay, let's say black. Int add int comma int. So that's the function definition declaration. And then we have suppose int main, and inside int main we have some local variables. Suppose say we have some local variables. We have a local variable like, or let's not have a local, let's focus on this add only. Or local variable. Suppose I have int n1 is equal to 10 is equal to 10, and then I have int n2 is equal to 20. That's another variable. And then I say int don't worry about the syntax. Our concern is about memory management. I say int answer is equal to 0, and then later I say answer is equal to add of n1 comma n2 is what I'm saying. And then I'm gonna see out header file. Assume karo ki I have included. I say see out answer. Okay, that's not how I anytime print, but just let it be so. Return 0. That's a small piece of code that we have written. But how is this add function now? The add function definition is something like this. Suppose it says long add. Oh, I have declared as int. So let me take as int add. Let's keep it simple, although it's a buggy code. Int, I say num1 comma num2 is what I said. And that's also of type integer num1 comma num2. And inside it, I have some other operation that I'm doing. I define some other variable saying int sum, and then I say sum is equal to num1 comma num1 plus num2. That's a simple code that I have written, and I say return sum. So that's a simple code that I have written. What's going to happen? Let's understand with the help of an example. Okay, so program execution starts, assume, and we are at this particular, I cannot select it, but we are at this line, main. This is the line where we are. Suppose we are at this line, int main is this line. When the program starts, function main is created. What's going to happen actually? Somewhere on the runtime stack, memory is going to be allocated. Okay, somewhere on the memory is being allocated. Say this is the frame that has been allocated for function main. Assume this is the frame that has been allocated for function main. So this is a frame that has been allocated for function main. So main has been allocated some frame. Inside this frame, what will happen? Whatever are the variables which are there inside function main, n1, n2, answer, they will all be stored inside this. That means inside this, we'll have some variables. First will be your, suppose your n1, second is your n2, third is your answer. These are number of variables which are there. All these variables have been stored inside the function. And we had initialized these particular variables. So whatever their values are, whatever the values of these variables are, they will also be stored. So here we had value as, suppose we had value as 10. Okay, I had value as 10 inside this. Here I had value as 20. Here I had value 20. And here initially I had value as 0. And this was your function main ka frame. This is main ka frame. So where is this allocated? This is allocated on the stack. This is allocated on the stack. This is the frame that has been allocated on the stack. Then you reach this particular statement. Where do you reach now? You reach to this statement and you say answer is equal to add n1 comma n2. Moment you call this function, what's going to happen? On the stack, one more frame will get allocated. And that will be the frame of your function add. So second frame has been allocated for function add on the stack. So this is the frame of function add now that has got allocated. So ye add ka frame hai. This is the function add ka frame. And inside this frame, you again have variables. What are the variables that we have? Some variables that we can see and some variables which we cannot see are also stored inside it. So right now we have variable num1, num2 and some 3 variables that we get to see. But these are not the only variables which are there. Okay, so what will be there over here? Let us assume what we get to see is we have a variable called as num1, variable called as num2, variable called as sum. In addition to that, there will be all other variables. There will be return value, there will be return address. These are variables that I have not been defined over here. I have not defined, but these are required for this particular function. So here we had this num1, we had this variable, I'll just take, we had this variable called as num1, then we had this num2, then we have this variable called as sum, sum. This is return address, suppose. This is return value, suppose. So there are so many additional variables. We are aware only of these three variables, 1, 2 or 3 ke baare mein all. There are some additional variables which are also required for implementation of this function. So what I was trying to tell you is, when you call a function, this area has to be allocated for that particular function. And for this function, we have to allocate some memory area. So this area which has been allocated for the function, who has allocated? It's the operating system which has taken care of allocating this particular area for your process. Memory management has taken responsibility for allocating memory area for this particular function. And where is it allocated? It is allocated on the stack. So stack is a location where this frame has now been allocated. Then we say, and what will this num1 receive? Obviously, जो आपने pass किया है parameter arguments. So what we have passed some arguments. While we give you a call, we are passing n1 and n2. These are my arguments. और जो receive कर रहे हैं ये मेरे parameters है. जो receive कर रहे हैं मेरे parameters है. n1 का value 10 था. तो here what we'll receive is now value 10. So num1 receives value 10. num2 receives value 20. num2 receives value 20. And then we say the sum is equal to num1 plus num2. 10 plus 20 now becomes 30. Now becomes 30. So it becomes 30 and we say return sum. So return value will again come inside it. And moment you go out of this particular function, the memory that was allocated for this particular function will now be released. So this memory will be released. Control will go back to this particular function main. It will go back to this particular function main. So while this is happening, memory has been released, control has been taken, went back. So when you came inside this particular function, the frame was created. When you are going out of this particular function, the frame has been destroyed. So all this memory management, who is doing it? It is the operating system. It's the process memory manager which is being done. So a function call, this time I passed n1, n2. Next time I pass add 3, 4. Next time I pass add 5, 7. Every time you give a call, memory will be allocated. Only thing that will change is the value that is stored in these variables and the result that will return, that will change. So every function call is also an instance, like int I equal 10, int j equal to 20. Both are variables of same type, but एक में value 10 है, एक में value 20 है. These are two instances of the same variable type. Int I, int j, both are of same type. Likewise, add 10, 20, add 3, 4, add 5, 7. These are three instances of the same function. And if functions are also instantiated, this memory is allocated means what are we doing? We are instantiating a function. So we are actually instantiating a function when we give a call. That means we are allocating memory when we call a function, and when the function returns, we are deallocating the memory that has been allocated for that particular function and so on. So it also requires memory. And where is this memory allocated? It is on the stack. And this block that I was talking about, what is this block? That's nothing but the activation record. Activation record where, and this activation record will not have permission to access the second activation record. A private area for that particular function. Only this particular function can have access to this particular block of memory and so on. So this activation record to be created, destroyed, call करो function के अंदर आने पर memory has to be allocated, function से बाहर जाने पर memory has to be deallocated. All these important operations are done by your or done on your stack. So stack is the area which is used for such kind of operations. The other memory area which is available for us is heap. That is of our area of interest अपने लिए. Now that's something that we are going to focus on. I'm giving you, this is the foundation and building for discussing concept of memory management. And especially those who had done C++, Mayuresh Vagara, you will get to see something new in this particular topic because I'm going to introduce modern C++ concepts also here. Invite your friends, if those your batchmates who had done C++ at our place, because I'm going to, as we go ahead, traditionally what we do and what new things are provided, I'm going to cover up both the things. This topic will be quite different. I'm going to introduce you to modern concepts of memory management also, which C++ fortunately provides us. Okay. So other memory area that we need to be worry about or understand is an area called as heap, which is our area of interest now. This memory allocation of the stack, deallocation of stack, how much memory allocated on for that particular stack frame, activation record was nothing in our control. The stack, whatever activation records that we have been talking about, this was nothing in our control. All those things happened automatically for us. The runtime system has taken care of for us. Now we are talking about area which is under our control. Heap is an area which is available for you and me as a programmer for dynamic memory allocation. So any object that we want to create on the fly, when I use the word on the fly, I mean while the program is running. You may say, sir, every memory is allocated only when the program is running. True. Memory is always allocated only when the program is running. Even if I inside function main in the last example where I said int I and int j, memory is allocated not when you compile the code, memory is allocated when we run the program. But how much memory has to be allocated, that was decided when you are compiling the code, when the code was being compiled. So when you talk about this stack, when you talk about variables, local variables, global variables that we have defined, where the memory is to be allocated, how much memory is to be allocated, everything has been decided at compile time. The only thing that will happen at runtime is actual memory allocation. So when you talk about automatic memory allocation, means decisions have been taken at compile and linking time in itself, how much memory is to allocated. Where is that to be allocated, that is also been decided at compile time itself. The only thing that remains is when to allocate memory, and memory is allocated when the function is called or when that instruction is executed. So how is heap different? Heap is very different, because the decision as to how much memory is to be allocated will not be taken at compile time. If you're going to decide about how much memory is to be allocated at runtime, and then you want to allocate memory after deciding at runtime, not at compile time, that means inside your source code you have not typed kitni memory allocate karni, you have not decided by saying int ya char ya float, you have not specified. Neither you have created an array, you just have a pointer, and that pointer is supposed to point to a block of memory. And how big a block of memory, we have not decided at compile time. We're going to ask the user at runtime how much memory is to be allocated. If that is what you're going to do, in that case, heap is the area that we need to be aware of. So on the fly, while the program is running, if you're going to decide how much memory is to be allocated, then what we require is this concept of heap. It is accomplished by making a call to the operating system that necessary amount of memory to be allocated for the process. So although we are saying we are going to take a call, that means we are going to decide how much memory is to be allocated. We can decide how much to be allocated, but we cannot control whether that request can be satisfied or not. We can at the most make a request to the OS, okay, now I need so and so bytes of memory, I need 10 bytes of memory, I need 1000 bytes of memory, I require 1000 bytes of memory. You can only ask, because anyway we are not going to go into the RAM and create a area, reserve an area for us. That's not going to happen. Heap is an area for dynamic memory allocation, but even to allocate memory on this particular heap, you will have to make a request to your OS. So every function that we'll be using, those who have done C, you may have used malloc, calloc, and in C++, we're going to have operators like new and delete. Although we'll be using these operators, although we have used those functions, in all those cases, you and me as a developer can only make a request for allocation memory. We are not going to allocate memory. We are only going to make a request for allocation memory. And when we make a request for allocation memory, your request may be satisfied, may not be satisfied. If enough memory is available on the heap, heap is a shared area, means memory area is shared between heap and stack. If there is enough memory that you have asked, that much memory is available on the heap, your request may be satisfied. And that too, that memory has to be in contiguous location, parts mein nahi. If that area, that big block of memory is available, what you ask for 10 bytes of memory, and suppose 10 bytes ka contiguous block is available, OS will satisfy your request, will allocate memory and return you the base address. Again, the starting address, not all the 10 addresses, because memory allocation will always happen in contiguous location. So what we are actually doing is we are making a request to OS, okay, I need so many bytes of memory. It is not we who are allocating memory. We are taking a decision when to allocate. We are taking a decision how much is to be allocated. That decision we are taking. But actual allocation is done by your OS. So we are making a request. OS can either return, allocate a chunk of memory, return its base address, starting address, or it may deny the request. So when I say deny the request, that means it will generate an error, exception, warning. It will return you a value, some flag which will tell us that memory has not been allocated. So it is not the case that you made a request, and since you have made a request, you are a boss and memory has to be allocated. No, you're only making a request. Your request may be satisfied or may be denied. Okay, depends upon the situation, depends upon how much memory you are asked, depends upon how much memory is currently available on the heap. Your request may be satisfied or may not be satisfied. Heap is also called as free store. It's a common pool of free memory used for dynamic allocations within the application. It is allocated from reserved region of the system memory called as heap. Now, when you talk about this free space, when you talk about this heap, It is shared between all functions. On the stack, every function had its own activation record that was private to that particular function. One stack frame cannot access variables in another stack frame. In the last example I took, add ke frame mein se you do not have permission to access the main ka frame. That is not possible. It's a private working area for every function. Whatever is there in that activation record is visible to instructions which are present only inside that function, not to any other function. But heap is an area which is shared between all the functions in your program. In your program, not multiple programs, in your program. So all the functions in your program have shared heap, one heap. Every function will have its own activation record, whereas all functions will share the same heap. So free store is a pool of memory available for you to allocate and deallocate storage for objects during execution of the program. That's what I'm saying. Allocate memory and deallocate. Dynamic memory allocation. In C++, we have two operators. One is new and other is delete, using which we can carry out this operation of allocation of memory and deallocation of memory. That can be done in C++. If you look at the program memory, okay. So a typical C++ program, how it actually looks like, memory layout, how does it look like? We have at the bottom text area. So when I say text area, all instructions have been stored over here because your program is made up of text, that is instructions, and the data. So your text area will have all the instructions that are there in the program. Then we have initialized data segment and uninitialized data segment. There are some variables in your program which are global. They will go here. There are some variables in your program which are static. That will also possibly go here. There are some variables in your program in which I said int I equal to 10. Okay. Yeah. You have said int I. You have not initialized. So those uninitialized variables will go here. And then when you give a call to a function from the command prompt, we can pass arguments. So your argv, argc, and arge, the environment variables, all those things are stored here. This is an area which is available for your, this is an area which is available for this is an area which is available for your heap and stack area. And note, there is no fixed boundary between heap and stack. That means your stack can grow downwards and your heap can grow upwards. जब दोनों एक जगह मिल जाएंगे, that means the stack and heap is full. Otherwise, there is no clear-cut boundary. Stack goes downward normally, heap goes upward, and wherever they meet, we say it is full. That's how we actually go ahead. Okay, so heap and stack, but heap stack for every what did we say? For every function, there was a separate stack frame on the stack, and all the functions were sharing the same area on the heap. So that was the difference between stack and heap. Heap, where dynamic memory allocation usually take place. Historically, heap is allocated between uninitialized segment and the stack. That is normally the place where it will appear. So we have this text segment, machine instruction that the CPU executes. Usually text segment is shareable, so only a single copy needs to be stored in the memory for frequent execution programs such as editors, C compilers, shells, and so on. It's an instruction area. This is read-only. You cannot go ahead making changes to the instructions. Also, text segment often is read-only to prevent programs from accidentally modifying the instructions. That means you can change the data. You cannot change the instructions while the programs are running. Then we have this initialized data segment. Simply a data segment called containing variables that are specifically initialized in the program, int I equal to 10. So that initialized variables will go here. So if I say int max equal 99, appearing outside any function, outside means global, not local, because local variables will go on the stack frame. So here we are talking about global variables which have been initialized, causes variables stored in the initialized data segment, the initial value. Uninitialized data segment, normally earlier in older generation we used to call it BSS. So block started with symbol kind of thing. Data segment is initialized by a kernel to arithmetic 0 or null pointers before the program starts. Your static variables also can come over here. I create an array saying long sum is equal to 1000, and that's also defined globally. Yeah? We are not talking about local variables, because local variables which have been defined inside a function will never come. Variables which have been defined inside a function will never come in this area. They will be there inside the stack. We are talking about global variables that we have defined, so those variables will be stored over here. So we had initialized and uninitialized data segment. Now what we need to look into is what functions, operators that are available for us for carrying out operation of dynamic memory allocation in C++. That is what we plan to discuss next. So we stop here today and we continue with a further discussion. Next session is again going to be a deep dive into some advanced concepts. And so you have to be very, very attentive.